and then
Easter's?
It's Palm Sunday.
and then Easter.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. That's all.
That's
I got.
it. That's all you got.
Yeah.
Palm Sunday.
On Sunday.
Yeah. We're doing a United service, which is an opportunity to get all of our communities together for one celebratory service. Celebrate Palm Sunday together. And so yeah, that's what we're talking about this morning.
I on one of the new people at church this past Sunday goes, "How come you don't do your bigger service on Easter?" And it was so funny because I said we used to, but then everybody who would come to church on Easter would show up in all of our communities and go, "Oh, you're not here."
Yeah.
And so that's why we moved it to Palm Sunday.
Make sense?
All right, Rich's wrap up.
don't go to the usual locations this Sunday. Go to the new. See you on Easter.
See you on Easter.
Wait.
Wait.
We're doing something that's a little bit different. We're going to be having reading the story of the prodigal son, kind of a expanded. What would you call it? Like a dramatized version. Of the prodigal son. It's, I think, just kind of going back why this is such a good thing on Palm Sunday. So Jesus enters into Jerusalem. There is the celebration of him coming in as a savior, the Messiah. There is definitely celebration that he's coming to rescue them. But the thing that they're celebrating is they're hoping for a supermajority, if not everybody, that they're going to be rescued from Rome, right?
Yeah.
That was their Roman oppression, their political oppression, even the religious authority oppression. Jesus stood out as a deliverer from a bunch of their oppressions. And we see in the Luke gospel that he arrives and he goes into the temple and he sees the money changers. And this isn't like a sales moment, but this was Jesus wasn't freaking out because they were using Square as opposed to just cash. This was a moment because it was the fence to engaging into connecting with God at the temple was this prophet process. And so Jesus flips the tables and he stands up. They're celebrating this Roman, that he's going to come to defeat Rome. We're celebrating he's going to come to defeat the religious oppressors. And he does. He goes and he flips the tables. But the whole point of this is not to point towards this alleviation of problem or whatever contemporary oppressor, but to be delivered from our separation from God. And why would God send his son to die for our sins? Is because it's his heart, and the great window into his heart is these parables.
Yeah.
Was that a big circle enough way to get to that? But yeah, why would Jesus come? Is because he's passionate about us, and the story of the prodigal son is truly this story of him showing this picture of God's passion, his care for his people.
I was thinking when you were talking about like the flipping of the tables, which I don't know why, but I always like that moment, even though it's a little stressful and confusing. I was thinking about the people that were in that, because they were selling things that were like for offerings, right? And things like that. And it's like, it probably started as like, probably people were trying to fill a need. Like it began as this way to like, how do we help people? How do we fill a need? How do we make this so it's possible? And then it turned into something a little more corrupt.
Yeah, because part of an offering is it does cost.
Yeah.
Which is the thing. It was like amusement park prices were hitting
Yeah.
the temple. And,
Going to the airport,
yeah.
getting a.
And so, if you came impoverished and you were going to leave a sacrifice of a sparrow, and all of a sudden, they were like, we have this captive audience. We can charge whatever we want.
Mm-hmm.
That was the fence that just was keeping people out. That Jesus was so upset about. This is crazy.
Is it clear that that they were charging too much is the problem, or the fact that they were?
But Jesus,
I don't know if I
Jesus says that you've turned it into a den of robbers as opposed to a house of prayer. And so the implication is that they were robbing the people. And so, and I mean, the pointing forward to new covenant and relationship with God is that the time has come where it's not going to be about the sparrows you sacrifice, that he's going to be the sacrifice. And so there's so much happening in that moment.
Yeah, because the Old Testament tradition was that you would bring 10% of whatever you made grew. Like if it's easier for us to think in a monetary value.
Yeah.
So I wonder if part of that process is that conversion process from taking. It's supposed to be what you have, 10% of what you make or have, but then they're creating a monetary system out of it.
Yeah. The exclusion definitely brought a rise out of Jesus's emotions, and that's really what's happening in the prodigal son story as well.
I
Is
think
that-
too in Isaiah, like we talk about oppression over and over again and
Yeah.
people being exploited, and I think that was happening and upsetting.
Yeah.
Exclusion, exploitation. I guess they're probably a little bit
Yeah.
same
It's-
thing.
it's a overarching theme. Jesus connecting with the blessing the kids is, the disciples are trying to shoo them away, and he goes, no. The simplest, the least. Jesus spending time with the Samaritan woman, but also then with the Samaritan community that came to meet with him there is that was an excluded, separated part of people. The people that were seen as being unclean because of leprosy or because of illness or whatever. The woman with the issue of blood. These are all people that would have been. There would have been cultural reason to say, yeah, of course they're exploited or set apart or looked down upon. Look at them, or do you know who they are? And that's Jesus is in this crowded room when he shares these three stories, and the people are saying, does Jesus know who he's eating with? He's eating with sinners and tax collectors. And so Jesus then sharing the story of the prodigal son, where the one who ran away is in the celebration at the end.
Yeah.
And the one who always stayed is outside, and there's no resolve at the end of the story. It's so humbling that the dad would come out and go, what you doing out here, buddy? And then your brother's home. And the story ends so abruptly that, this invitation to come in and celebrate, no, story ends. It's like, and so that the response of the marginalized to say yes, and the response of the insider to go, what are they doing in there? Is something I have to really struggle with. And unfortunately, for us, or for so many followers of Christ, is that we can easily find ourselves being the older sibling more than the prodigal.
I think it really, like last week we talked about the grace piece. What was the person that the story of the workers that came? One came in the morning, and then one came at the end of the day, and they all got paid the same price. And the person in the morning being upset versus, and like you read that, and it feels like that does feel very unfair when you think of like hourly wages. But like grace in that moment isn't about fairness. It's about we all get equal. We all get grace. It's all abundance. It's all. I liked the end when we talked about it's not just about unfairness. It's that grace is just so generous.
Yeah, because I would say, little kid moments are great examples of like understanding fair is something that is pretty hard to do. It's not always as they got two and I only got one. But when we think about I've been really holy all my life and I just get to go to heaven and they do too, is that grace, it isn't fair for anybody.
Yeah.
And so that's that parable is so powerful because it's not to say, hey, everybody gets the same. It's to say, grace is so exorbitant to everyone.
Yeah.
And so
that grace is really on display early in the story. It's something that as Western readers we really don't catch on to, but the younger son shouldn't have received his inheritance directly.
Right.
It should have come through the older son. The older son, when the father passed away, would have received the entire estate, and then it was his to manage and take care of his father's family line. So the younger son receiving inheritance directly is already the father giving in abundance and beyond
Yeah.
what was expected.
Yeah, and it's
It's-
extra reason of why explains more why the older son was so annoyed.
Yes.
Because he took the father essentially took what was the older son and gave it to the younger son, and then blew it and
Blew
it
it.
came back, and so
And then the
more
older
than blew
son's
it,
gonna have to do it again.
more than blew it, and this is another like Western thing. If you give this story to Western readers, they go, the story's about like he was irresponsible with his money, and that's why he fell on hard times and went out. But like everyone else points out, there was a famine, so like his
Yeah.
life
it's hard for
circumstances.
everybody.
Yeah, there's circumstances in addition to being irresponsible. It's
Mhm.
not. Yeah, it's not a. It's one of the others. But yeah, there's just so much about this that Western readers like little details that are like one or two words that just really thrust this story
Yeah,
forward in
and
a
the-
different way.
The spotlight, there's many, but I think that it's also easy for us to take the spotlight onto the kids,
Mhm.
for sure to the younger son. But the spotlight that is so remarkable is the dad. Generous, even so. I think that it'd be easy to use words like gullible or a pushover or whatever, but so loving. And then like this picture of him meeting his son when he comes back, like that's the
Yeah.
like it was remarkable that the son was willing to come back, but he was coming to be punished.
Yeah.
You know, he's like, I'm going to be the least of my least father's servants, and I'll have it better than I have it now. But he wasn't coming back for redemption or hope. He was coming back to get what he deserved.
Mhm.
And the dad again flips it, runs out. What a beautiful interaction! You know, like that moment when somebody raises their hand and you think they're gonna hit you, and you're like, why did I think you were gonna hit me? And so like I'm sure this was a moment like dad's running out to meet him, and it's like, is dad going to linebacker tackle me now?
Yeah.
Or rather just embraced him. And but then also too, again, this picture of the dad in the celebration, it is so what a humbling moment for dad to come out to the older brother and to interact with him. At this, in my just processing of this, even this time, I just have thought over and over again that it's very easy to just think dad was so gracious to the younger son, but to the older son, to know what's going on, he's not coming in. That jerk. You know, it would be so easy to just
Yeah. Be angry and
be
frustrated.
angry. Yeah. And so it's actually like cuts pretty deep when you see that God's character is outside of any of our deserving, is to be so gracious and patient and hopeful for us.
Mhm.
And and as we try to be Christ-like, as we try to have the character of that God has for us, to love our neighbors as we love ourselves, love as we've been loved, to be gracious and patient for people who should know better. That's like the group of people that's so easy to be zero patient with, right?
Yep.
Internally or externally.
Yeah.
And but it's so fun that again, as we walk into Easter, to like what helps us truly have a heart of celebration of his Jesus' sacrifice and his victory and rising again is wasn't to have an elementary school named after him, but it was to because he is response out of his love for us.
Mhm.
That's very easy for me to just kind of take for granted in any situation.
Yeah, it seems to be the perspective of what's deserved is important. Like the older brother thought he deserved whatever, thought other people deserved this. The younger brother, at one point, thinks he deserves his inheritance early, and then later realizes he actually doesn't deserve anything. And even that picture of deserving he missed the mark in that too. Like, there's this healthy perspective of what people deserve is in that middle ground of like, do you deserve God's grace? No, but you get it anyways. But do you also deserve the worst thing in the world all the time.
Pig's
That's probably
food.
also no.
But even the older brother didn't, had that kind of that whole deserving thing because at the end the father says, all this was yours to,
Yeah.
and so he was holding back himself and going, I can't do this because I don't
Yeah.
deserve it, so I need to hold back.
I was thinking about just the way when Ty was talking about family and we say inheritance, but the father hadn't died yet, so it makes me go, was it really his inheritance he was getting, or was it half his wealth on earth right now? And then that feels a little more intense even than just half his inheritance, because it's he's still alive, he's still here. And then you're talking about the son, and it was already all his, and that's kind of mind-blowing. And then when you think, okay, when the father passes away, if what has already been given to the younger son, does the older brother then have to split again or take care of the younger son? And and I don't mean that to focus on the older brother, but to think this is when God shows us grace, and then the older brother is going to have to make a choice someday of whether he's going to have that grace or not, and
Yep.
how his younger brother is going to live. And I don't think that's the point of the story, but I do think it kind of shows what God is calling us to,
I think it is a big part of the story because Jesus was sharing this because the religious authorities in the room were grumbling loud enough to be heard.
Yeah.
So Jesus would hear, but also so that the people, the sinners and tax collectors, would go, "Why is Jesus hanging out with them?" And so to come to the end of the story where the older brother is left with the choice. We don't hear the resolve of the
No.
choice, and then to think that the choice is an ongoing thing.
This is a heart change.
Yeah.
It's what's going to happen when the dad dies, and how are you gonna live? How are you going to keep going with your younger brother?
Yep.
And
yeah, and
that's really
the painful part of it is that the the religious authorities, from this point of this parable being shown or shared all the way through Jesus's crucifixion, they definitely showed that they were an immovable object.
yeah.
They were going to not only stand against Jesus, but also to the people that were serving him,
Yeah.
and disciples of him. Yeah. But we're having 8 different people are going to be sharing a portion of the story. We're going to have some dialogue questions in between the sharing. I think it's going to be cool. That's my hope. No one will know how this goes until it actually happens.
It's gonna be
It's
great.
going to be so fun.
It's gonna be fun. I think it'll be great.
I think you said it all.
No wrap up today?
Scott's wrap up. Perfect.
Come eat food, hang out, talk about Jesus.
We'll see you guys for Easter.
Yeet.